We were lied to, not by a conspiracy, and not by a faked moon landing in a Hollywood basement. The lie was much more professional than that. For 53 years, the scientific establishment looked us in the eye and told us the moon was a graveyard. A cold, gray, geologically dead rock where nothing has happened for 3 billion years. They showed us the grainy photos. They handed us the definitive maps. They told us there was nothing left to see. But on April 6, 2026, 4 humans aboard the Orion spacecraft flew into the lunar shadow and caught the moon in a lie that shatters 5 decades of settled science. Reid Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen didn't just orbit a rock. They witnessed things that shouldn't exist. They saw colors that defy every textbook in your local library. They saw the surface of a dead world flashing with violent, unexplained light. And they saw a geometric anomaly so bizarre that it suggests our current understanding of the solar system is a complete fantasy. We are going to look at the data NASA doesn't want to emphasize. We're going to talk about why our billion-dollar satellites missed what the human eye saw in seconds. And we're going to explain why the moon isn't just a destination. It's a warning. Here's the problem with modern science. We trust machines more than men. Since the 1970s, our entire understanding of the moon has come from robotic orbiters, cameras, spectrometers, and LiDAR. These machines are brilliant, but they have a fatal flaw. They only see what they are programmed to see. A digital sensor records light at fixed wavelengths. It flattens reality into a data set. But the crew of Artemis II carried something no robot has: the human brain. David Kring, one of the world's top planetary scientists, spent 2 years training these 4 people to be lunar detectives. He didn't want them to just take pictures. He wanted them to notice when something was wrong. To do this, the crew turned their spacecraft, the Integrity, into a dark room. They rigged up camera shrouds, essentially blackout curtains, to kill every reflection from the cabin lights. They lived in total darkness, eyes pressed against the glass, waiting for the moon to reveal its true face. And when it did, the gray moon vanished. Ask anyone what color the moon is. They'll say gray, maybe white. They are wrong. When Wiseman and Glover looked down from 4,000 miles, they described a world of vivid browns, deep emerald greens, and shimmering metallic blues. This isn't just an artistic detail. This is a geological revolution. These colors represent high concentrations of iron and titanium, minerals that are supposed to be buried deep or scattered thinly. But the crew saw them in concentrated, swirling gradients across the crater walls. Why didn't the satellites see this? Because of something called space weathering. Over billions of years, the sun's radiation turns the surface into a dull, gray dust. But underneath, the moon is a vibrant, mineral-rich treasure chest. The crew saw where recent impacts had scratched the surface, revealing a world that looks more like a rusted jewel than a piece of charcoal. If the textbooks got the color wrong, what else did they miss? This is where it gets unsettling. Victor Glover, the pilot, became obsessed with the Terminator. That's the line where sunlight hits the moon at a low angle. On Earth, we have shadows. On the moon, you have the void. Because there is no atmosphere to scatter light, a shadow on the moon isn't just dark. It's a physical hole in reality. Glover described seeing islands of light surrounded by valleys that looked like black holes. Here is the uncomfortable truth. NASA's maps are flat. They show you a crater and give you a depth number. But the crew realized that the topography of the moon is violent. We're talking about mountain ranges near the South Pole that make the Himalayas look like rolling hills, peaks that are 20,000 to 30,000 feet high, plunging into shadows that haven't seen a photon of light in 2 billion years. How are we supposed to land a base there? How do you navigate a world where a shadow can hide a cliff tall enough to swallow a skyscraper? The Artemis II crew realized we aren't just visiting a planet. We're entering a labyrinth. If you want to talk about things that shouldn't exist, we have to talk about Reiner Gamma. If you have a telescope at home, look at the Oceanus Procellarum. You'll see a bright, swirling pattern. It looks like a fingerprint. It looks like someone took a giant brush and painted a white S on the moon. For 400 years, scientists have called it an albedo feature. That's a fancy way of saying a bright spot we can't explain. Here is the mystery. Reiner Gamma has no height. It has no craters. It is perfectly flat, but it sits on top of a massive magnetic anomaly. The Moon has no magnetic field. It's a dead rock. So why does this one specific spot have a magnetic shield stronger than anything else on the lunar surface? There are three theories, and all of them sound like science fiction. 1. A comet hit the Moon, and its magnetic soul got trapped in the rock. 2. There's a massive, metallic, possibly artificial object buried miles beneath the surface. 3. The Moon isn't actually dead, and there's a localized heartbeat still pumping magnetic energy to the surface. The Artemis II crew watched this swirl for hours. They noticed that the pattern isn't just static, it interacts with the solar wind. It's a mini magnetosphere, a shield. No one, not NASA, not the world's best physicists, can tell you for certain why it exists. It is a glitch in the matrix of our solar system. Now, let's talk about the moment things got loud in Houston. Halfway through the mission, the Orion passed behind the Moon. The sun disappeared. Total eclipse. For 54 minutes, the crew lived in the deepest darkness any human has ever experienced. They took off their eclipse glasses and looked out at the halo, the sun's corona glowing behind the black disk of the Moon. It was the most beautiful thing in human history. And then, the Moon started flashing. In the total darkness of the lunar night, the crew saw 6 distinct bursts of bluish-white light. These weren't reflections. These were meteoroid impacts. In the science evaluation room at Johnson Space Center, the scientists literally started screaming. Why? Because the frequency was outstanding. On Earth, our atmosphere is a shield. A rock the size of a marble hits the air and burns up as a shooting star. It's pretty. It's harmless. On the Moon, there is no air. That marble-sized rock is traveling at 40,000 miles per hour. When it hits the ground, it doesn't just stop. It converts its entire kinetic energy into a thermal explosion. It vaporizes. It becomes a mini nuclear blast. The crew saw 6 of these in less than an hour. Do you understand what this means? The dead Moon is actually a shooting gallery. If we build a base with glass windows and thin metal walls, it's only a matter of time before a cosmic pebble traveling 50 times faster than a bullet turns that habitat into a vacuum-sealed coffin. NASA didn't expect this many hits. The Artemis II crew just proved that the lunar surface is under a constant, violent bombardment. The lie of the quiet Moon just became a life-or-death engineering problem. Why are we so obsessed with the South Pole? Water. We think there's ice in the permanently shadowed regions. If there's ice, we have fuel. If we have fuel, we have Mars. But the Artemis II photos of the South Pole are horrifying. The terrain is so rugged, so torn up by billions of years of impacts, that finding a flat place to land a starship is like trying to land a helicopter on a pile of broken glass. The crew saw Lobot scarps, giant ridges that look like the Moon is shrinking. And it is. As the Moon's interior cools, it shrivels like a raisin. This causes moonquakes. Think about that. You're in a fragile lunar base, meteorites are exploding outside like artillery fire, and the ground beneath you is literally cracking and shrinking. Does that sound like a dead world to you? To understand the scale of the violence, the crew looked at 2 basins, Orientale and Hertzsprung. Orientale is a bullseye, a 600-mile-wide crater with concentric rings of mountains. It looks like a ripple in a pond, but the water was molten rock, and the pebble was an asteroid the size of a city. The crew described the rings as lips on the far side of the Moon. But they noticed something weird. The symmetry was too perfect. When you look at the geometry of the Moon's largest basins, you start to realize the sheer energy required to shape this world. Hertzsprung is older, battered, and softened by time. Orientale is sharp and fresh. By comparing the two, the crew realized that the Moon isn't just a record of the past, it's a clock. And that clock is ticking faster than we thought. The weathering we expected to see on these craters wasn't there. Things looked younger, more active. Is it possible our dating of the Moon is off by millions of years? If the moon is younger than we think, it changes everything we know about the Earth's own history. The Integrity is home now. The crew brought back 10,000 photographs. They brought back hours of audio. But have you seen the photos? Have you heard the raw audio? No. NASA is processing them. They are cross-referencing them. They are calibrating the data. Now, I'm not saying they're hiding aliens. I'm saying they're hiding their own ignorance. The scientific community spent 50 years building a model of the moon. It was a nice, safe, gray model. It was easy to explain to Congress. It was easy to put in textbooks. The Artemis II crew just lit that model on fire. They saw colors that shouldn't be there. They saw magnetic shields we can't explain. They saw a bombardment rate that makes a lunar base look like a suicide mission. And they saw a world that is geologically screaming while we thought it was silent. We thought we knew the moon. We had the data. We had the maps. But as it turns out, the data was a rough draft. The Apollo astronauts didn't lie to us. They just didn't have the training to see what the Artemis crew saw. They were pilots. These are geologists. They were looking for a place to land. These people were looking for the truth. The moon is 240,000 miles away. We can see it every night. And yet, we are just now realizing that we know almost nothing about it. The next time you look up at that bright white circle in the sky, remember, it isn't white, it isn't quiet, and it isn't dead. It's a world of emerald mountains, invisible shields, and exploding stars. It's a world that caught us in a lie. And the scariest part? We're going back, whether we're ready or not. Thanks for watching. If you think the moon is hiding something else, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. See you in the next one.